All right, so we're going to take a break from my ramblings talking about Nick, and we're going to have a little musical interlude and some discussion here. So very proud to introduce Kester Jones, singer, songwriter, guitarist, pianist, harmonica player, glockenspielist, zitherer.
Oh, really?
Do you like
Zitherer?
that?
Is that the correct word?
Probably not, no. But as we're English
a
teachers...
A zitherist.
No, I'm using job suffixes. You'll know all about that because you're an English teacher. Now, I was trying to think of some of the weird instruments we used to use when we recorded my songs in Madrid.
Yeah,
anyway,
that was most of them.
I'll think of some other ones later. Anyway,
hello.
Welcome to the podcast. Hello.
Thanks.
I actually just realised the other day that we have actually recorded an interview/discussion before. Do you remember those interviews in 2015?
Yeah, those ones, yeah.
I'd almost completely forgotten about that. I should probably listen to those again.
I saw it on YouTube the other day, actually. I was with a couple of friends and we were taking turns to search each other's names on YouTube. And,
right.
That was one of the first things that came up with my name.
We know you're also a boxer, aren't you?
Yeah, apparently, yeah.
Yeah.
I was quite pleased that it comes up with things for me before the boxer, because I think the boxer is quite famous.
Yeah, you're a dark-skinned boxer in your spare time.
Yeah.
You kept that one quiet.
Yeah, it's my secondary job.
Yeah, there is an Antony Rotunno on YouTube, Antony with an H. It's this muscle-bound guy who just constantly puts videos of his family on there. But did you listen to any of that interview?
Not recently, but
no.
At the time, yeah.
Yeah. I was using very amateur recording. I've learned a few things since then.
Yeah, we were in that cafe that had that really noisy coffee machine or something. Yeah.
Well, I think at the time I was sort of thinking it sounded organic, but probably just sounded annoying.
Yeah, just this every minute or so.
Yeah, they were quite bizarre. Everyone seemed to distance themselves from them instantly. I think Porrig was the only one who shared them on any of his. Maybe you did as well, but everybody else seemed to want to forget about them as soon as possible. Anyway,
no, I liked it. I know my mum liked it as well, so that's nice.
That's good. Yeah. Okay, a few perfunctory questions, and then we'll get to the music. So, when did you first hear about Nick Drake, and what were your first impressions?
The first time I heard Nick Drake was when I was at university. I remember it really clearly, actually. Well, I remember parts of it clearly. The rest of it's quite hazy.
I'm impressed you can remember anything about university clearly, but anyway, go on.
So I was at a friend's house. We'd had quite a big night out, and it was 7 o'clock in the morning or something. And my friend put on, I think it was the compilation album, An Introduction to Nick Drake, Way to Blue, I think it was called.
Yeah, Way to Blue, yeah, that's right.
The first song on that was Cello Song. We were sitting there, we were drinking tea actually, we were being quite civilised, surprisingly. But yeah, he put this on and I first heard the guitar and I was like, what's that? I'd never heard it before. And he said, oh, it's this guy called Nick Drake. And I was convinced that it was 2 guitars as well. And he said, no, it's just 1 guitar. And then I made him go back to the beginning and listen to it again. And then I think the second song was Hazy Jane 1.
Hazy Jane 1, right, okay.
And yeah, I loved that as well. And then we kept the album on. I think we listened to that album about 3 times in a row before people finally went home. And that was my first introduction to Nick Drake.
Interesting you said about 7 in the morning, because I was saying to you off mic, the only bit of audio we have of Nick Drake talking is about 2 minutes, and I think it's about 1968 or something, about a year before he recorded. And you know how, like, when you're drunk, it can emphasise your accent. So if, like, a Cockney gets drunk, they suddenly sound like really Cockney. Nick Drake was obviously quite posh, and he just sounds even posher. He's like, oh, yes, I've had a wonderful evening, but one did get rather... I don't know if he uses the word squiffy. He probably didn't, but...
Squiffy.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised.
I think one has spent a lot of time in France because I started driving home on the wrong side of the road. And anyway.
Good evening. Or should I say good morning? The time is 25 to 5. I've been sitting here for some time now, actually. In this room, I got a party, which I quite enjoyed, but one has one's reservations. One has quite enjoyed oneself, but one has to make reservations because the people were particularly interesting. In fact, there weren't as many people as I expected there to be, because I thought, the Maynard Mitchells have a big do. In fact, there weren't nearly as many as one might have thought, which was a pity. In fact, I think I must have drunk rather a lot, although I didn't seem so at the time. I thought myself quite sober. When I leapt into the car to drive home, after my merry abandon, I found the task extremely difficult, and it was extremely fortunate that there was nothing else on the road, because looking back on it, I seem to remember I had a mental brainstorm that I didn't realise at the time, and I think I drove the whole way home on the right-hand side of the road. This is something, of course, which comes from driving in France too much, which is what I've been doing recently, as you probably know. Moments of stress, such as was this journey home, one forgets so easily the lies, the truth, and the pain. But still, I'm wavering from the point. What I was trying to say is, when I sat here, I had a extremely pleasant time on the piano. Actually, I was playing the piano and sort of singing. And I rather fear I might have kept people awake upstairs. One hopes not, but it was pleasant, and it's extremely pleasant sitting here now, because I think there's something extraordinarily nice about seeing the dawn up before one goes to bed, because there's something uncanny about it when it suddenly becomes light, because one connects darkness with going to bed, surely, and when one is still up, it becomes light. And it's a new day, and you still haven't gone to bed to sleep, because the night equals sleep so easily. And when one is still up, when the new day begins, it is something of an intriguing experience, I always find. Anyway, I think I'm straying from the point. I shall probably stop talking here, because if I don't, I shall start sort of relating sort of life histories and things which will be very tedious. So here with that, I'll also say goodnight, good night.
Etc. Yeah,
sounds like the royal family.
Yeah.
The actual royal family, not the TV series.
Oh, right, yeah. Well, in this, I started reading a second biography, Darker Than the Deepest Sea.
Yeah, I haven't read that one.
Sea. One of those.
I'll have to try and get it and read it.
Yeah, they describe him as sounding like a minor royal, which is quite funny. But
is that book worth getting? Has it got a lot of extra information?
Definitely, because he had an extra 10 years. It's 10 years after the first one, and he very cleverly doesn't really repeat, because the Patrick Humphreys one, the one that you've read, Nick Drake, a biography, which I used most of for the blog post, that's very comprehensive. So this guy, what he does, it's a shorter book, so he kind of mops up all the bits that weren't covered in the other book. Sadly,
I'll try and get hold of it.
Yeah, you should, yeah, it's pretty good. It's a very quick read as well. It's interesting he had a compilation, because obviously compilations serve a purpose, but with Nick Drake, what's amazing is that the 3 albums are so distinct, aren't they? Like the first one's got some augmentation, the second one's very clearly an attempt at like a commercial pop album, then the third one's stripped down. So have you got a favourite, or do you consider them, as I said on that podcast, like 3 children, aren't they?
I mean, yeah, they're all different, but no, I don't have a favourite. It's impossible to choose a favourite one of them, really. They're all equally indispensable, I think. But yeah, I mean, after that first introduction that I was saying about before, my friend, he lent me the CD to take home, and I listened to it for the next few days, and then a week after, I went out and bought all of the 3 albums, and the one that was released after he died. I think it has 2 different names. One of them's Time of No Reply, and there's another one, Made to Love Magic, I think. They released them at different times with some different songs. Those 4 or 5 songs that weren't released, the ones he did later on.
Yeah, because what happened was Time of No Reply was actually considered an unofficial 4th album.
Yeah.
It's those 4 songs that he made a few months before he died, and then there's one called Mayfair they found, which is quite good. Joey. Yeah,
Joey. So they came out on... I think I have the other one, but I've got all of them. But was it Made to Love Magic, that one?
I can't remember. Originally it was Time of No Reply, and then Made to Love Magic is a few new songs, new as in newly discovered, and then different mixes of those same ones on Time of No Reply. So I think it is 2 separate releases, but there's quite a lot of crossover.
Yeah.
Weirdly, Time of No Reply was a song that he actually gigged, and he played it on the John Peel session, but decided not to put it on any of his albums. I don't know why.
He recorded it in the sessions for 5 Leaves Left, I believe.
Yeah, he did, yeah.
But yeah, I don't know why it wasn't put out, because it's a really good song. There's nothing wrong with it at all.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's curious.
Yeah. And then, like, what's amazing is that I would say he's not particularly emotional on his songs, or it's a sort of, the first album's a sort of poetic, tragic thing, but it's not necessarily to do with his life. It's more like channeling the poets.
Yeah.
But then when you get to something like Black Eyed Dog and Hanging on a Star, I mean, Hanging on a Star is almost like a song to Joe Boyd, because Joe Boyd went off to America and essentially sort of left him. He was like this father figure who deserted him. And he was sort of everything Nick Drake wanted to be, because he was very sort of socially comfortable and things.
Yeah.
Because Nick Drake had decided to make Pink Moon stripped down, so Joe Boyd basically wasn't needed, and he got a really good job offer from Warner Brothers and left to America. But then I think Nick Drake felt like Daddy had... Daddy.
He felt abandoned.
Daddy, come back. It was one of those, yeah.
Don't leave me, Daddy.
All right.
Yeah.
So when you first heard Nick Drake, you were like, wow, what's that?
At that point, like I played acoustic guitar a little, but my acoustic guitar playing was basically just strumming open chords. I played a lot more electric guitar. My sort of wannabe Jimi Hendrix licks and things. But yeah, I didn't really play acoustic guitar at that point, and my finger picking was non-existent.
Oh, okay.
And so basically, I mean, I learnt to play acoustic guitar from listening to those main 3 albums, really.
Oh, right, okay.
And then after that, I found other guitarists, other things that Nick Drake was clearly influenced by, and different picking styles and stuff. But yeah, anyway.
So what I was going to say was, does he have a signature style? Because some of those people, some of those names would be Bert Jansch, Davy Graham, John Martin, John Renbourn, those kind of people. Does he fit into that style, or is there something unique?
There are similarities, obviously. But yeah, I'd say he does have a unique style. In my mind, Bert Jansch and John Renbourn, they're more deeply rooted in like the folk tradition and traditional English folk songs and things. Davy Graham also, but obviously he did some more kind of blues things as well. But yeah, I think the main difference with that, I don't know if this is really true, but in my mind, I feel that for those guitarists, the main focus of their songs is the guitar.
Okay.
And with Nick Drake's songs, the main focus is the song. So like the guitar is kind of a vehicle for the song. You can see that in his picking style as well. So he's not doing so many intricate things on like the high strings so much. He's more doing counterpoint things to his vocal melodies. So it's obviously from the same kind of tradition, but I'd say it's more song-based in my opinion. And similar with John Martin, because they both started at a similar time. They're kind of contemporaries of the other more traditional folk guys.
I think they were quite close as well. I think when Nick Drake started to go downhill, which are more and more, to be honest, I'm sad to say this, but from this book, it seems more and more that it was to do with drugs,
really?
Including heroin, especially mixed with prescription drugs, because he was prescribed anyway. But John Martin was quite close to him. The album Solid Air, the song Solid Air is actually about Nick Drake, or dedicated to Nick Drake. Yeah. But I think what people say about Nick Drake, and there's some great interviews with people who were at Cambridge with him, they said they couldn't believe how strong it sounded and how fluent. And apparently, if he ever missed a take or whatever and he was recording, he could do the same thing almost perfectly every single time. What do you think about that?
Well, yeah, I mean, the main 3 albums, when he recorded them, he was playing and singing at the same time.
Yeah.
I don't think he overdubbed. The 4 songs that were released after he died, apparently those ones, he recorded the vocals separately because he wasn't quite up to doing everything together.
Yeah, he was literally too traumatised. He was in such a state. That's the only reason he couldn't, but ordinarily he could.
Yeah. But I think, he was, as far as I know, he was very consistent with his playing and singing. I think with some of those patterns, you have to be consistent. If you miss a beat on some of them, they kind of fall apart. The momentum has to carry it on, a kind of perpetual motion thing.
I think maybe one of the advantages of being an introvert, I think he was a serious introvert, and then drugs and everything and the pressures of fame just sort of made him go more and more in on himself. But I think those introverts, you can imagine him just sitting for hours and hours and hours, just playing and playing and playing, because he was quite socially awkward and probably spent a lot of time in his room,
Yeah, I imagine. Well, there's all those home recordings as well, which came out on Family Tree.
Yeah, Family Tree's good.
Yeah, I really like that. I mean, it's not the same as the 3 main albums, but I think the nice thing on that is you can basically hear his influences as well, because he's doing lots of covers, and you can hear that he was influenced by blues and folk and country and a couple of kind of jazz things as well, a combination of different things. He sounds nice and relaxed as well, and you can hear him just playing for himself, I think, because he didn't intend people to hear them really.
Yeah, I think that one, Family Tree, was sanctioned by Gabrielle, his sister, and the family, I guess. Yeah, there's a lot of blues. So is there actually any blues in his original songs, would you say, musically? Are there bluesy notes?
That's a good point, actually. Not especially. I mean, he has like sevenths and things like that, but I don't know if there's bluesy notes in any of them especially. I suppose like Brighter Later has got more kind of, it's got jazzy things in it, but that's more the other instruments maybe, rather than...
Yeah.
I can't think of a specific one that I'd say is like a bluesy song.
It's interesting, isn't it? Because a lot of his Cambridge friends, they said that when he used to bust out the guitar and jam, around campfires or wherever it was, university parties, he would invariably go to blues. And then he also played a lot of Billie Holiday on the guitar. I don't know how exactly that works, but he had the jazz leanings, I think, from his family. You must have heard some of his mother's songs.
Yeah, some of them,
that was quite strange, isn't it, to hear? I don't think they're similar, but I think there's a slight sort of tragic quality in some of her songs. They're quite wistful, and they're quite...
Yeah, and they sing with the same kind of accent as well, don't they? And so there are some similarities. I suppose his own songs, there's the one on Made to Love Magic, was it Mayfair? That's kind of a more sort of jazzy type of song. It's not blues, but it's more... Yeah,
jazzy.
It's one of his more jazzy ones. Poor Boy maybe is quite jazzy, some of it, but that's mostly the saxophone and the piano actually though anyway.
Yeah, I mean that rhythm section on Brighter Later is basically Fairport Convention's rhythm. Bloody good. Dave Maddox and Dave Pegg.
Yeah. I'm not so keen on some of the flute, but the rest of it I really like.
Yeah. Just very generally, do you think on 5 Leaves Left, because we did do a deep dive recently on that podcast, do you think some of the adornments were a bit for the sake of it? I mean, obviously I think Robert Kirby's fairly solid, but do you think some of the other stuff was almost for the sake of adding to it?
Which things? I mean, the string arrangements are really good, I think, on that.
Oh, yeah.
I think they had a lot to those songs.
Definitely. There's a couple where those congas just seem a bit...
I kind of like them, actually.
Do you like them?
On 3 Hours, for example.
Yeah.
It gives it this slightly more sort of menacing, insistent sound, I think. And they're on Cello Song as well, aren't they? I think they go on that well. I think it makes sense. I don't feel like they're unnecessary.
Right. And then I had a disagreement, very friendly disagreement, with Morris, who did that podcast.
Yeah.
I was saying that maybe I'm sort of conditioned by rock to feel that bass needs drums, and that when you have double bass on its own, it sounds a little bit empty. But, I mean, obviously the guy is a great player, Danny Thompson. He's a brilliant bass player. But, I don't know, what do you think?
I don't know. I think the thing you were saying about bass and drums with electric bass, that's definitely true. Electric bass without drums sounds weird, but double bass without drums is... I mean, a lot of the early Elvis recordings was Elvis, Scotty Moore, and the bass player,
Bill Black.
There's no drums on the first handful of Elvis recordings.
Oh, that's interesting. Is there someone like tapping away, or is there literally no percussion?
I think the percussion sound is from the acoustic guitar from Elvis drumming, and I think he does that. I can't remember what the technique is called. The slapping. So you play a note and then you slap the strings.
Okay, right.
It's very, very common in rockabilly kind of stuff. But I think because the bass playing on 5 Leaves Left, it's quite kind of jazzy. I think it's okay without the drums. To me, anyway, it doesn't sound weird.
Okay. Yeah, I still haven't found anyone to agree with me about that. I'll keep working on people, don't worry.
I'm trying to. There must be something. Some of the piano, maybe. No, I like the piano as well. Yeah. Sorry. I don't completely agree with that.
Don't worry, no problem. Yeah. Okay, we have to talk about the tunings because Nick Drake is so synonymous with tunings. Just for people who don't know, so the standard tuning is E, A, D, G, B, E, and the only really ones that I'd ever heard of really was Open G, popularised by Keith Richards, late 60s Stones, Dadgad, and then our friend Porrig uses Open D quite a lot.
Well, Open D, Open E, they're like typical kind of blues, like especially for slide guitar.
Open D, because that works with the slide, that makes sense.
Yeah. Dadgad would be back to Davy Graham, who we spoke about briefly before. He used Dadgad a lot.
Okay. So before you actually demonstrate, let me just say, Do you think all the tunings, do they all add something? Or again, is it sort of an indulgence, or is it something just experimental for the sake of being experimental? What do you reckon?
I don't think it's an indulgence, because I suppose when he was writing the songs, he was just playing them by himself.
Yeah.
And I think with the different tunings, you can get lots of kind of lots of subtle differences. So you can have like an interval of a second on different strings, which you wouldn't normally have. I think a lot of it as well is like his actual left-hand finger patterns aren't really very complicated.
Right.
Most of his songs only have a few chords. So I think it was finding ways of having a different tonality and being able to play things with different notes that ring out. Because open strings are very important for a lot of his songs.
Yeah.
But like, for example, if you try and play some of his songs in standard tuning, they just don't work.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of essential for a lot of them. Although it's kind of interesting though. There is some debate about which tunings he actually used for some of the songs. For example, with Riverman, because after I first got into Nick Drake, I bought a songbook. I think just Nick Drake songbook or something.
I remember the days you actually go to a music shop and buy a book with it.
Now,
tell me the songs.
Look on the internet.
Tell me the songs, because I can tell you what this biography says, because it seems quite comprehensive.
So in this first songbook I got, it said Riverman was in CGC FCE, which is one that he uses quite a lot. But then actually Riverman is in standard tuning apparently.
Wow. Did you say CGC FCE?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what it's got in this book. So
for Riverman.
Yeah.
But then I've seen other people
it.
saying that they're convinced it was in standard tuning.
Right.
You can play it in both, and it sounds fine in both of them. Has a slightly different in the dropped tuning in C. It sounds a bit deeper, obviously, but yeah, it's interesting. There is some debate about some of them. I think Northern Sky as well. There's some. I've seen some different tunings for that. One option is where it's like B E B E B E, but there's another one that I've seen which is in some form of open D as well.
What I've got here is D A D G D G.
Yeah, so it's like some kind of variation on like a D tuning.
Otherwise known as Dad Guduga. Yeah, doesn't quite work, does it?
Yeah, that famous Dad Guduga.
But it's famous from this moment.
Yeah, but I've seen other things that say it's B E B E B E for Northern Sky.
Wow.
So there is a lot of debate about it, it seems. Anyway.
Well, there are a couple of songs actually where it only uses a few strings. I think Black Eyed Dog is on about 3 strings, apparently.
Yeah, I think that's an open G, that one.
Okay.
The interesting thing is that he doesn't have many songs that use the traditional open tunings, that use open G or open D. A lot of them are variations on different things. I think Black Eyed Dog and I can't remember which one. There's another one of those 4 that were released after his death.
Yeah.
There's 2 in open G. I don't know if there's one in open D or if they're just variations of an open D kind of thing. It's curious. He seemed to stay away from the standard open tunings.
Yeah, I feel like
maybe he was searching for a different sound in that respect. I don't know.
I think it was all quite sort of instinctive in a weird way.
Yeah.
Because, of course, one of the problems he had, you probably know about this thing about him gigging or lack of gigging. It actually turns out he probably did about 25 or 30 concerts in his life.
Oh, really? That's more than I thought, actually. Yeah,
more than I thought as well, until I read that one of those 2 books. But yeah, he did do quite a few, and he actually went up to the north, for example. He did one in Hull, did one in Liverpool.
Wonder what they thought of him there with his posh royal family voice.
Yeah, well, there might have been a bit of prejudice. Well, the thing is, they probably never heard his voice because he literally never talked to the audience ever. But they might have seen him in the bar going, "Oh yes, I'm going to play this." But I think he got really traumatized because he'd go to university, sort of boozy university parties when they want to hear like "Daydream Believer" or something something they can sing along to.
Beatles songs and
they get these very introspective. Give us something to sing, mate. And he's like, "Riverman, have you seen Riverman?"
And they're like, "Can you do Honky Tonk Women?"
Yeah.
I guess that wasn't out at that point, but that kind of...
Yeah, well, it might have been, Yeah, and one of the problems was because, obviously, even though he came from a sort of moneyed family, he didn't turn up with loads of guitars all tuned differently. So also he'd spend loads of time tuning, and everyone's like, "Oh, yeah, come on, mate, get on with it." You know.
Yeah, I read something about that. Like his live shows were a bit of a kind of a torturous event for the audience.
Yeah, for everyone,
so he was just endlessly tuning his guitar and retuning it, and
But like he wouldn't talk to them while he's doing it. Someone who's quite extrovert would be saying, right, just going to tune the guitar and then tell them a story or something. But he had nothing.
Do you think it's true that he often performed, well, I say often, like on those few times when he performed live, do you think it's true that he had his back to the audience as well?
Yeah,
So
I think
I'm
that
not
might
sure.
be a bit of a myth, because there's that myth about Stuart Sutcliffe in the Beatles, wasn't it? I'm not even sure. There's actually one picture of Stuart Sutcliffe with his back. I'm not sure. No, I don't. I think he'd more be hunched,
like kind of hunched over the guitar.
Absolutely, just
with
really,
his hair covering his face, I imagine.
Yeah, because I likened it to he played live as if he was in a recording studio, so he's right next to the mic, so it picks it up well. But he's got his head down. There's almost like he's unaware that's whatever's going on.
I imagine him being a bit like the Neil Young Unplugged MTV Unplugged video, where he's hunched over the guitar quite a lot with his hair over his face. I imagine him being a bit like that, actually.
Well, there's another one that Neil Young did in London, I think, 1971. It's only about 5 songs. I mean, the music is just fantastic, but he's very introverted. So the only ones I found in standard tuning, my version of Way to Blue that we're going to hear was actually based on the piano demo in Family Tree. So the chords there are actually fairly standard. Are there any other ones that he did in standard tuning? Is it a handful?
There's a surprising number, actually. Yeah, there's a few from, especially on the first album. I'm trying to think. Time Has Told Me, I think. Well, that was another one where I first learnt it in open C, but apparently that's in standard tuning as well.
Okay. I've got here C, G, C, F, C, E. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, that's what I thought it was. But then, there's you can play it in standard tuning, and it sounds more or less like the recorded version as well.
Okay.
And then there's other ones on that album in standard tuning. Just let me check my.
That's
notes.
all right. While you're doing that, I'll just say Poor Boy, I think, is in standard as well.
Yeah, I think that's in standard.
Yeah.
So here I've got a list of the ones that they say are in standard tuning here. This is from a website called nickhealy.com, Nick Drake Tunings. So Time Has Told Me, Riverman, Day Is Done, apparently standard tuning.
Okay.
Poor Boy, Things Behind the Sun, that's an obvious one. That's one of the first ones I tried to learn, basically, because it meant I didn't have to retune the guitar.
Yeah.
Joey, Mayfair. And then there's some other ones that I haven't heard of, actually. Rain, Blossom, have you heard them?
I've heard of Blossom. I think they're sort of undeveloped jams, because I don't know if I was saying this earlier, but his sister actually got really annoyed because Family Tree was sanctioned. But what would happen is, in the years before he became like really famous, sort of around the 80s, people started to hear his name, obviously long after he died, unfortunately. And people would turn up at the house, and Rodney Drake, his father, would give them compilations.
Yeah.
And then years later, they'd put them on the internet. So some of them are not. There's one that's not great, but there's a few sort of. Yeah, there's a few. I think I've heard the name Blossom, but anyway.
Yeah, maybe it's on Family Tree.
Someone on YouTube's about an hour and a half, which is quite amazing.
Yeah.
An hour and a half of ones I hadn't heard, which aren't all great, but they're just
really?
they just sort of got curiosity. Yeah, I'll send it to you after.
Yeah, that'd be good. I'd like to hear that.
And then we get to these very bizarre ones, which, joking aside, I think the fact that he was losing the plot, getting very depressed, may be a form of madness. The song Which Will from Pink Moon, great song, is apparently in B, F sharp, B, E, D, D sharp, or D sharp or E flat.
I think it's just the same as C, G, C, F, C, E, but down a semitone. So maybe that wasn't on purpose. Because there are some songs, especially the ones that he did by himself, where the tuning, it's not exactly concert pitch. It's kind of between two keys. Because obviously he was just tuning the guitar to itself. Because if there weren't any other instruments, he didn't need to worry about tuning it to any specific thing. So maybe he just tuned it down by mistake. I don't know.
So he would tune down to B rather than up to B, would he?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, because tuning up, you'd probably break the string, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
I mean, if you take something like The End by The Doors, they've got the low and the high E's tuned down to D, and it gets this lovely, like, when you play the opening chord of The End, it sounds very satisfying with the two D's.
I think it's the same tuning on Cinnamon Girl as well, by Neil Young.
Oh, yeah.
So it's got these kind of droning strings through it.
Yeah, that's the other thing, is the drone, isn't it?
Yeah.
But how about this one? Hanging on a Star, apparently is A, A, D, A, A, C sharp, which is, I guess it's sort of almost A, A, D, A, A, C sharp, almost open A, but with the E down to a D.
Yeah, so it's like an A add 4. I don't know how musical the people listening or watching this will be. I mean, if you understand that, then it's basically the 4th degree of a scale, which it wouldn't normally be in a chord, but it gives some kind of interesting overtones.
Yeah, so for the non-musicians listening, I suppose what we're saying is that when you tune lots of strings to the same note, so in that one you'd have 4 strings, you just get a very open or drony. The drone, again, for people who don't know, is like a low sound that continues through the song. So Indian music, or in fact Within You, Without You, the song on Sgt. Pepper, it just is all on one chord.
Yeah.
So it has this sort of hypnotic effect. And I think Nick Drake's songs are definitely quite hypnotic, aren't they?
Yeah, I mean, that's part of his style as well. Maybe that's another difference between him and people like Bert Jansch and John Renbourn. He relied more on drone notes going through the songs, because there's lots of them where he's only actually changing 1 or 2 notes and the rest of them are staying the same, and those 1 or 2 notes that he changes, it basically gives the chords a whole different quality.
Oh, interesting. So I wonder whether he heard some Indian music. I mean, he must have known the Beatles went to India, I suppose. I mean, he could not know that.
I mean, I suppose it's partly just from having the different tunings as well. They kind of lend themselves to having a low bass note going through all of them, and then the chords changing on top.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get to it. So you've heroically tuned 3 different guitars. So thanks for doing that. Tuned to 3 different tunings. So the song we're actually going to hear that yourself and your partner Melanie recorded is Cello Song. Is that the tuning you've got there?
No.
Oh, okay. Oh, no problem. So just tell us the tuning you've got there and just give us a demo of the song.
This guitar that I'm holding at the moment is tuned to B,
okay.
E, B, E, B, E.
Okay.
So it's only actually 2 notes across the whole guitar.
Okay.
And so, like, this would be common for... just let me change my notes. If you think of Chime of a City Clock, for example.
Okay, it's from Brighter Later, isn't it?
Yeah. This is the problem with when you have the guitar tuned down so low, it's very hard to keep it in tune.
Yeah,
especially when you put a couple on as well.
Perfect.
So the thing I was saying about the drone, for example, could be like this. Like a really important part of what he did was like the thumb is really important to keep that momentum going.
Yeah.
And then the chords that changed on the top. So for Chime of a City Clock, it would be and if you can see my hand, it's the same shape, just moving down a semitone.
Okay.
So the actual left hand it's not doing anything especially complicated, really. It's one shape that just moved down. I think that was a very common thing in lots of his songs as well, but he had the in the guitar he had these kind of descending lines on the middle strings a lot. So a drone on the bass string, descending lines on the middle strings, and then sometimes like open strings on the top for like a ringing kind of sound.
Because that's interesting, because in sort of 60s pop, like Beatles, etc., the trend was for the chord to stay the same and the bass to go down, wasn't it? Like Dear Prudence.
Yeah.
That's interesting he did the opposite. Was anyone doing that before, or do you think that's maybe something he invented?
I don't know if he invented it, but it's definitely one of his kind of signature. It's a signature part of his sound, I think.
Wow, cool.
Rather than like the other guitarists we spoke about Jansch, Davy Graham, John Renbourn, I think they did more like, more like if I'll change to the normal tuned guitar.
Okay.
Like with finger picking, like kind of like blues or blues country sort of finger picking or Travis picking. I don't know what the names are really.
I call it Travis picking, yeah.
Like you have the thumb doing, if you think of, do you know Freight Train, that song by Elizabeth Cotton?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. If people haven't heard that, I definitely recommend looking for a video of that. I think she's about 80 or 90 years old and she's playing this song. She's left-handed as well.
Yeah.
It's a song that she wrote when she was 11 or something.
Oh, wow.
So the bass does this. And then you have like a melody on the high strings, which would be a... That's kind of like more of a typical way of doing things, I think. But then if you think of Nick Drake, you'd have like so we saw Chime of a City Clock before. Man in a Shed, for example. So the things that he plays on the top strings, they're not a melody. He has this kind of descending thing again, which, as I said before, I think is kind of a trademark of his. And then the open strings, the high strings are just open, just ringing against the tonality of the bottom strings that move.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah, there's a bit of blues, isn't it?
Yeah,
and a bluesy
bit.
bend there. Yeah.
Slight bluesy bend, yeah.
Yeah.
But again, it's like just like two fingers in this hand, basically.
Wow, that sounds fantastic.
So the actual chord shapes, this hand is fairly straightforward. The real difficult thing is in the right hand for a lot of his things. So yeah, so if we go from the verse pattern, it's basically like this. Etc. That kind of thing.
Oh, brilliant!
Didn't play it quite right, but you get the idea.
Yeah, I can
So,
really
like,
hear
there's
that.
not
I
so
can hear
much-
that drone.
So there's not so much melody going on in the high strings. The high strings are more kind of ringing, and I suppose the ringing sound of them is kind of a high drone, and then there's a low drone, and then the movement is just kind of in the mid range, as I was saying earlier, like a counterpoint to his melody, like his vocal melody. I mean, I'm trying to think of other examples. Do you want any other examples?
Well, just before you do that, I was just thinking the very last song that we recorded, that Rows of Empty Chairs, I suddenly had the idea of having a high drone instead of a low drone. So that's something that, again, I haven't really heard of, because we always think of a drone as low, don't we? But that's interesting. No, carry on. If you can just give us a couple more, that'd be lovely.
Another one in this would be From the Morning. It's this tuning.
Oh, I love From the Morning. Fantastic.
Let me see if I can. So the actual chords it's playing are these. And then, and this chord is a very typical Nick Drake chord as well.
Yeah.
This sound, you hear it all in loads of things. I'll change guitars in a moment. You can hear it on like Hazy Jane and or Which Will, A Place to Be or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, this is like, so you have the drone, which is this. So that's going all the way through, and then you have
oh, lovely.
etc.
Wow.
I think the guitar's gone slightly out of tune.
That's all right.
Yeah.
No, we get it. And on the right hand, just very generally, can you give it sounds like you're sort of finger picking and almost strumming at the same time?
A little bit, but it's more just to do it. I suppose it's because I'm not really playing it properly. That's why it sounds like that.
Okay.
I mean, really, I think he was very precise with his picking. On the ones where he was picking, there's some where he was just strumming as well, though. But let me see. I
feel like the second album was a bit more strummed because it was more of a rock.
Yeah, I think
rock album.
I think because there were more instruments on it, he didn't need to focus so much on the guitar.
Was that Northern Sky?
What? No.
That chord you just played.
So this is the other tuning that a lot of his songs are in, or like one of his favourite ones. This tuning, you can play anything and it basically sounds like Nick Drake, really.
Yeah, that sounded a lot like Northern Sky, but I suppose it's not exactly that, is it?
No, not exactly. Apparently Northern Sky was in the other tuning, or that other one you said before, the DAD something. But yeah, like this sound. That chord, it's in a lot of his songs. It's basically playing like a minor second, kind of ambiguous minor second chord instead of the 5 chord. For non-musical listeners, the 5 chord would normally go back to the 1 chord. But he played a minor chord on the second degree of the scale instead. It's in a lot of his songs. But yeah, I'm sure you recognise this one, for example.
Yeah. You can sing if you feel like it.
I need to concentrate on
Right,
this.
yeah. Well, that was the other thing I was going to mention. When you did a cello song, you were telling me it's really hard to play his stuff and sing at the same time. So that's another of his achievements.
Yeah, I don't know how he did that, because another thing with a lot of his songs is that the guitar is so precise, metronomic, I suppose you could say.
Yeah.
And then so he's doing this really precise picking completely on the beat, but then his singing is completely off the beat. It just kind of floats across the top of it, almost with no regard for the rhythm sometimes. And so I think that's partly why it's really hard to try to do versions of his songs, because on the one hand you have the picking, which it takes a long time to get to. You kind of have to practice it until you don't have to think about it, I think. And then trying to sing across the top of it is really complicated. People don't talk about his singing so much either, but his singing was always impeccable as well. It's always perfectly in tune. I don't know if he had perfect pitch or something, or like you never hear him sing sharp or flat.
I think he might have had perfect pitch, actually. I think someone said that. Right, people don't talk about it. It's just a lovely sort of floaty... How can we describe his voice? Very wistful.
Yeah, floaty would describe it. Airy.
Yeah. There's obviously a huge difference between Five Leaves Left and Pink Moon. His voice sounds harder on Pink Moon. Like, obviously he's had 2 or 3 years of probably self-abusing a lot and this sort of depression and things.
Yeah. A bit more weary, maybe, in some ways.
Yeah, the sort of voice of experience. Because on this podcast we were saying really the first album, it's not that it's inauthentic, it's very authentic to him, but he's channeling the poet. He's sort of talking about tragedy, but he hasn't really had any tragedy in his life.
Yeah.
You know? But by the end, I kind of like Pink Moon, because I feel like, I don't want to pick a favourite either, really, but I think the songs on Pink Moon, I don't feel they need anything. Maybe it's because I've heard them without anything for years. It could be that. I mean, Pink Moon's got a bit of piano, hasn't it? I think that's the only bit.
just like a couple of notes. We were saying about the drones that go through the songs. I think on that album especially, they're more kind of drony sounding.
Yeah.
Maybe partly that's why they didn't really need other instruments as well.
Yeah.
For example, the song Parasite. I don't know if I can play this. I'll see.
Okay, here we go.
So this is another one in this, the CGC FCE tuning. I was saying before about these like counterpoint lines and droning strings. So the only note that moves in this song is this one. Well, F in this tuning, I suppose. And it just does... That's all it does. And then there's another bit that does that. But most of the song is that, just that one note that moves. While the other strings are doing... so you have this bass drone... which goes through it, doing that kind of pattern. And then you also have at the same time. So it's like 4 notes that are all the same.
Wow.
And then the part that moves is, I'll do it slowly so you can hear it and so I can play it.
Okay.
So there's only one note that's moving, and the other ones are all the same. But the chord, it gives this sense of movement between the chords, and then that's kind of a platform for his melody to bounce off of as well.
Wow.
It's really interesting how little is actually moving in this hand, but it sounds like it's a really full sound.
It's very rich, yeah, very full.
That descending, it's in loads of songs where you have like the.
The jazzy one.
Scares for me.
Is that Nina Simone or is that
Yeah, but that's just, it's in loads of songs though. So I don't know if a descending thing is synonymous with his depression or anything.
Yeah. Before we finish, I wanted to ask you, do you think his songs actually sound sad? Because a lot of people say they listen to Pink Moon and it's depressing, but I think maybe it sounds more depressing if you know his story. Does he actually use a lot of minor or not necessarily?
Not on Pink Moon so much, no.
That's interesting.
I mean, Things Behind the Sun is clearly minor.
Yeah.
I'd say there's probably more minor keys on the first album. You've got the songs like Fruit Tree and
Way to Blue is in E minor, isn't it?
Way to Blue is minor. Riverman's minor and then major. It kind of alternates.
I think maybe they're minor because, like I said, he's sort of channeling this sort of poetic gloom, even though he didn't have it in his real life. So that would make sense.
Fruit Tree, Day is Done is very clearly minor. I suppose 3 Hours is minor. Way to Blue is minor. So I would say there are actually more minor songs on his first album. The songs on Pink Moon, we were saying before, there's more use of drone sounds.
Yep.
They're more ambiguous, I would say, some of them. They're not exactly major or minor, I think, just because of like the tones from the open strings and things that he's using.
But I find his stuff uplifting. I don't find it depressing at all, really.
Yeah,
I think
most of his...
Go on.
Black Eyed Dog is... Oh, yeah, that's obviously quite...
I mean, that's not even on the albums, though, is it? That's a sort of...
No.
Would have been on a fourth album, I suppose.
I suppose a lot of his lyrics are kind of wistful or melancholic.
Yeah.
But they're not downright depressing, I wouldn't say.
No.
He's not blatantly talking about death and things like that.
I mean, actually, in 5 Years Left, when we did this podcast recently, love that album.
Yeah.
We did find there's a few pointers to what happened later, but again, I don't know, because he said fame is like a fruit tree, and he gives the idea that people only appreciate you after you're dead. He does say that sort of quite explicitly, but
I suppose that would make more sense if it had been on the third album.
Exactly.
Because at that point he hadn't experienced fame, and he didn't know that sadly his records weren't really going to sell that well during his lifetime. Yeah,
well, that's a sort of a Joe Boyd thing. I think that is sort of maybe reading too much, as if Nick was predicting the future. I can't buy that, to be honest. I don't know. Have you got any theories just before we go, like on what caused his descent? Do you think it's sort of fame, pressure, drugs, or just all of those things?
I think a combination of those things, really. From what I gather, he was really disappointed that his albums didn't sell that well. I can't remember the exact figures, but I mean, they're essentially flops, I think, when they came out. They sold a little, but not very much at all.
I think they sold probably between 3,000 and 5,000, I'd imagine.
Yeah. I think especially after Brighter Later, because that was the sound of it. It was clearly made to be kind of more of a pop sound or more of an accessible sound. And I think he really believed that would sell well and he would become popular from that. I mean, maybe that's why he decided for Pink Moon, just to do it by himself, which maybe that's more in line with what he wanted to do originally. I don't know. I'm speculating. So I think his lack of success was one of the things. Obviously, his long-lasting problems with depression and insomnia as well. I think it sounds like he was just really tired because he hadn't been able to sleep properly for ages, and so he just took a bunch of sleeping tablets because he wanted to sleep. That's what I gather. Again, speculation. It's impossible to say for certain.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think a combination of things. I think he wanted to be successful, but then on the other hand, he didn't really like performing, so I suppose there were problems with that. And then, we've spoken about his problems with depression, insomnia. I think the combination of all of those things just kind of led to his downfall.
Like I was saying, this second biography does point more to heroin. It seems actually, I mean, again,
I didn't know about that much before.
Who knows what to believe, but presumably I'll take this guy at his word that he's researched it properly, but it does appear that he probably did it a few times, and in a funny way,
it's quite Moorish, I suppose.
As Moorish, that's a good word for it. Yeah. It's sadly predictable, really, because you get an introvert who's in pain, and then you take the ultimate painkiller, and it feels right, and sad.
Yeah, it makes sense. I mean, I think at the time when he died, he was actually he was at his parents' house, I think, to have a break from things and to try to clean up his lifestyle a bit and that kind of thing. So I suppose it does make sense that maybe he was overdoing it with some things before that.
Don't know if you know this. He actually tried to become a computer programmer. His dad got him a job. Yeah, working in an office.
No,
it's so hard to believe.
At all. It's
almost as hard to believe as, like, I don't know, Jimi Hendrix doing data entry or something. You know, it just doesn't seem right somehow. He even applied to join the army. Amazingly enough, about a year before he died. Yeah, that was off his own back. Apparently, that wasn't his family's influence.
That's surprising. From what I've read about him, doesn't seem like he has the personality to be in the military at all.
Yeah, we didn't like waking up early for a start.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I haven't read about him being in any fights or anything, but I don't imagine him being especially aggressive and.
Yeah, he'd probably prefer to carry a guitar rather than a gun, wouldn't he? Like,
yeah,
that was his weapon of choice, so to speak.
Try and pacify the enemy by playing Hazy Jane.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah. Here's a nice folk tune, everybody.
Yeah.
Stop fighting.
Everyone, just sit down.
Smoke a joint, relax.
Yeah.
All right. Would you like to just briefly give us one more before we close? Anything you want.
Example or?
Yeah, one more example.
I was thinking, this one. This is more of a strumming one. Place to Be. Maybe I could change the tuning while we're doing this.
Oh yeah, this is a personal favourite of mine.
Yeah, I really like this one. So you can't play it in this tuning that I was in before, which is the C, G, C, F, C, E. But apparently, this string is tuned down more.
Okay.
So I'll just show you, because you were saying, like, why does he use the different tunings? And part of it is because you do get a different tonality with the open strings that are ringing. So this is with this normal tuning.
Okay. Oh, lovely.
Sounds like that. If you tune this down, hopefully it will work.
Just want to say as well, his vocal on that is probably my favourite. It's very husky, but again, it sounds like more experienced.
Yeah.
And he even, I didn't notice this, he sings When I Was Younger Than Before. It sounds almost a bit like Help. It's almost like the first line of Help. Yeah.
I was younger, so much younger than before.
Yeah.
Well, the vocal on this actually is an example of what we were saying before about how the timing is quite peculiar sometimes. It just kind of floats across the top of the playing. I'll try and give you an example in a second. But this is with this string tuned down. So you get this drone of these two strings at the same time, which they're the same note. And then you also get this drone, which is by itself, it sounds horrible actually, doesn't it?
But that's what I mean.
It sounds a bit like a car horn, like beeping.
Yeah. That's what I mean.
But
these songs are supposed to sound depressing, but they sound really warm. That sounds very warm to me. The guitar's sort of quite glorious. Maybe it's just because the playing is so good.
Yeah, but you get this string droning through it, which... And I think this is the only song that has this tuning, so it sounds like this now. A different overtone that goes over the top of it.
Oh yeah.
And this is another example of that chord that is in lots of his songs, where it goes to this chord.
Oh yeah.
I was saying before, it's like basically the lower three strings with three fingers, like you play them all together.
Yeah.
It's a definite trademark of his. I can I'll sing a verse just to show you what I was saying about his timing.
Give us your huskiest voice, okay?
Yeah. Give me a moment. But yeah, anyway, so I'll just do the first verse. When I was young, younger than before, never saw the truth hanging from the door. Now I'm older, see it fade gotta get up, clean the place.
Ah, lovely.
As an example.
Yeah, that's great.
But can
That's
you,
a song-
like, it's hard to get the singing though, because it just goes across everything, and the words are weird lengths. It kind of extends things where you wouldn't really expect, and that kind of thing. It's yeah.
So in conclusion, he's very unique, really, even though he comes from some kind of tradition.
Yeah, it's absolutely unique. His voice, the way he plays his songs, and that's why it's very hard to do versions. I would like to be able to play all of the songs, but it's so hard to learn them
And sing at the same time.
And sing at the same time, yeah. When I first started learning them, I could play a fair few of them after I first heard him and I got that songbook. But then when I tried to sing them, and it just fell apart. It was impossible. I think after a long time trying to practice them, I can probably do about 3.
And to use a cliche, these songs will just be appreciated forever, for as long as people are around. Same as Beatles, same as loads of people.
Yeah, I mean, I think, more people listen to Nick Drake now, obviously, than when he was alive. But I think more people listen to him now than 20 years ago when I first heard him as well. I think his popularity is, it just continues to increase. I think because, like, if someone is unique, then there aren't going to be new artists that will come out and do anything better. Like Jimi Hendrix, for like, as an electric guitarist, in my opinion, you can't really get better than Jimi Hendrix. Same with Nick Drake, like his guitar playing, his singing, for that style, you can't really improve it, I think.
Yeah. All right, brilliant. Yeah, maybe just before we finish, just to say, I think the direction the world's going in, the way we're getting more and more isolated, families are being spread out and everything, maybe it just makes even more sense, this sort of slight sense of isolation. But then weirdly, his parents used to say, they've obviously been dead quite a while, but they outlived him, sadly, for 20 odd years. And they said young people would come to their house in Tamworth in Arden and say, oh, Nick's music has uplifted us. It's not that, I still contend, it's not depressing. I could see how if someone is sort of very isolated, they might sort of indulge themselves in it. I could see that. Yeah. But I think it's just glorious, really, more than anything else.
I completely agree. I mean, I've never thought his music was depressing.
No.
It's more, as you said, it's melancholic, but it's wistful, and if anything, I would say it's optimistic. The sound of his voice, the tonality, his guitar playing, it's uplifting, I think.
Yeah, and definitely beautiful, yeah. All right. Okay, so for the subscribers who are watching this on video, thank you very much for watching.
Oh,
for listening.
Could I add one other thing as well?
Oh,
we were
please,
talking about alternate tunings. So for the version that Melanie and I did of Cello Song, it's actually, so I'm playing guitar and singing, and we thought it might be nice to incorporate her singing. So she's singing on one verse and then joining me for some of the last verse. I really like it on that Family Tree album, the song that he sings with his sister. What's it called? I really like the sound of both of them singing. Yeah, they're just singing in unison, but it sounds really nice. So I was partly thinking of that as well when we did that. So I thought it'd be nice to have her singing. But she plays viola on that, and in order to get the lower note, she had to retune the viola. So the low string is tuned down from a C to a B flat. So we've got guitar in alternate tuning and also viola in alternate tuning.
Oh, wow.
So Nick Drake influence. Crossing over onto viola as well.
Yeah, obviously replacing the cello, right.
Yeah, because obviously a cello would be able to play that note. But I just thought it was an interesting thing to add for when people hear that version of the song.
Okay. All right. So, once again, for the video, people watching this on video, thanks for watching. For the audio, as of now, I haven't decided whether we're going to put Cello Song now or at the end of the podcast, but one or the other, we're going to hear yourself and Melanie playing that. And thank you very much for being on the show.
Well, thank you for having me.
You're welcome.